Hello guys, so far we have discussed about three diseases about liver, which are liver cirrhosis, alcoholic liver disease and acute liver failure. So now our topic is about hepatic encephalopathy. What do you know about hepatic encephalopathy? Here we are going to revise these things. The first thing we are going to discuss about hepatic encephalopathy is its definition. Define. So what are you expecting? What if should be the definition? Hepatic liver encephalopathy, problem in brain function, brain dysfunction in the presence of liver insufficiency. What kind of brain functions are dysfunctioned? Like the cognitive function and the mental status, both can be affected in hepatic encephalopathy. So as we have discussed the definition of hepatic encephalopathy, let's write it here with red topic name hepatic encephalopathy. We are going to discuss. So guys, the definition is brain dysfunction, fluctuation in mental status and cognitive function in the presence of liver insufficiency. Like liver is in a state of cirrhosis. Liver is in a state of cirrhosis. So let's discuss about its epidemiology. Epidemiology. 30 to 40% of cirrhosis patients will experience hepatic encephalopathy. Will experience hepatic encephalopathy at least once during their clinical course. This is the epidemiology. So now what are the causes of hepatic encephalopathy? Causes of, as we already discussed, brain dysfunction due to any liver insufficiency. Maybe there is any liver disease like liver cirrhosis already running place in a patient cirrhosis. ठीक है, patient is a case of liver cirrhosis, or maybe patient is a case of any other liver underlying pathology, other liver dysfunction like acute liver failure. So what happens in this case? Hepatic encephalopathy, how it is caused? The main culprit is here ammonia. Ammonia is a causative agent which causes hepatic encephalopathy. So there are two mechanisms. First one is ammonia is absorbed in blood in greater amount. Increased absorption, and as absorption is increased, there is a factory which produces ammonia. Production is also increased. Increased production leads to increased absorption. What causes these things? These how this ammonia is produced in excess quantity and why this is absorbed so much. Maybe patient is suffering from any infection like spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. Bacteria overgrowth produces ammonia. Systemic inflammatory response syndrome SIRS. Maybe patient is having GI bleed where bacterial flora produces so much in GI bleed. The next thing which increases absorption of ammonia is constipation, as bowel is not bowel's motility is not increased, so flatus is not, stool is not passed, so absorption is increasing. Constipation also leads to increased absorption and production of ammonia as there is more transit time for bacteria to produce ammonia. And the fourth cause of increased production is increased dietary protein intake. Protein intake. And the fifth cause is hypokalemia. Hypokalemia also leads to increased ammonia production and absorption. Now, as we have discussed, the first cause is increased absorption and production of ammonia. The second mechanism that is affected in the body is decreased metabolism of ammonia and clearance of ammonia. Decrease clearance. As in ammonia is produced in more quantity, more volume and more in absorption is also increased of ammonia, so there is decreased metabolism. That's why there is increased absorption and low clearance rate of ammonia. Why this is happens? This is happened due to renal failure, portal vein thrombosis. The third cause is which decreased metabolism of ammonia and its clearance is portosystemic shunts. Fourth cause is hypovolemia. Volume is decreased as a patient is of dehydration. Diarrhea and vomiting. So the fifth cause which decreases metabolism of ammonia and its clearance is metabolic alkalosis. In diarrhea, patient presents with metabolic acidosis. In vomiting or hematemesis or upper GI bleed, patient presents with metabolic alkalosis. Let's suppose patient uses diuretics. In those patients which uses diuretics, there is hypokalemia as well as hyponatremia. These diuretic use causes hypokalemia and hyponatremia, which also leads to decreased metabolism and decreased clearance of ammonia from the body. So we have discussed so far that there is increased production of ammonia, increased absorption of ammonia, decreased metabolism of ammonia, and decreased clearance of ammonia. The main culprit I have told you is ammonia, NH3. So what will happen? We are going to discuss about its pathophysiology. We have cleared the mechanism of our concept. Now we are discussing the pathophysiology. Let's discuss pathophysiology. What happens? Patient is a cirrhotic liver disease. He has developed cirrhosis. Now what will happen? There is decreased hepatic metabolism. His liver is not functioning now. Decreased hepatic metabolism. And there is a formation of portosystemic shunt. What will happen? It leads to accumulation of now the toxic substances that are produced in the liver. The toxic substances that are produced in the liver will directly go to systemic blood. Systemic blood. This systemic blood, when reaches to brain, these toxic metabolites, I am making with circles, reach to brain. As these reaches to brain, they will cause altered mental status. So we were discussing the pathophysiology. In a cirrhotic patient, there is decreased metabolism of liver and formation of portosystemic shunt, which leads to accumulation of neurotoxic metabolites. One of the main metabolites which is neurotoxic is ammonia, NH3, which is we have discussed in upper etiology. This ammonia neurotoxic metabolite. This ammonia causes excess. Now this ammonia has reached brain by portosystemic blood. This has reached to brain. Now it causes excess glutamine formation. Excess glutamine formation, and it causes swelling in brain. This swelling is produced by brain cells, specially called as astrocytes. These astrocytes are responsible for swelling in brain. This swelling leads to cerebral edema. Now you are getting my point that how hepatotoxicity leads to brain dysfunction. This cerebral edema, and as there is excess glutamine and swelling by astrocytes, there is edema. Edema means accumulation of fluid in brain, so there will increase intracranial pressure. This intracranial pressure produces neurological deterioration. Now you got my point. Now we have discussed about the cirrhosis, how cirrhosis leads to brain or neurological deterioration. Now we will discuss about metabolic effects. Metabolic effects. The second pathophysiological mechanism is metabolic effect. We have discussed in upper that diuretics leads to hypokalemia and hyponatremia. How potassium is associated with this neurological effect? We'll discuss it in metabolic effects. Let's see. There is hypokalemia. Patient uses diuretic and presents with metabolic alkalosis. There is hypokalemia or dehydration where patient presents with hypokalemia. This hypokalemia leads to, now we are going to make a cell. This is a cell. It leads to shifting of potassium. As we are making potassium in the cell, it's a cell. In hypokalemia there is shift of potassium outside. This potassium moves outside the cell, and there is, to maintain this electroneutrality, hydrogen ions from outside hydrogen ions from outside moves inside the cell. You are getting it? Hypokalemia. How hypokalemia affects? Potassium moves outside the cell and hydrogen moves inside the cell to maintain electroneutrality. This leads to intracellular, as now the condition is that this is a cell, hydrogen is more inside and potassium is low inside. 1 2 3 potassium inside, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, 8 potassium outside. Now the hydrogen ion is also present outside. You are getting it? As the concentration of hydrogen ion increases inside the cell, it leads to intracellular acidosis. This acidosis produces more ammonia. Tubular cells produces more ammonia. How ammonia is more produced? Hydrogen concentration. 1 nitrogen plus 3 hydrogen are required to produce ammonia. That's how ammonia is produced. NH, NH2, NH3. When there is sodium inside the cell, nitrogen inside the cell, my mistake, I said sodium. Nitrogen inside the cell, hydrogen is in excess, so maximum amount of ammonia is produced inside the cell. This will leads to neurological deterioration. Now our next concept is about how metabolic alkalosis. The words I am using, I am explaining those words. How metabolic alkalosis deteriorates our neurological functions. So in metabolic alkalosis, what happens? There is decreased concentration of hydrogen ion. Decrease hydrogen ion concentration. Like having symptoms of patient presented with vomiting. The his GIT condition will be of metabolic alkalosis. His metabolic status will be of alkalosis. There is decreased concentration of hydrogen ion. So it will lead to decrease conversion of ammonia to ammonium. You are getting my point? So the one thing that you should clear here is ammonia converts to ammonium to release from the body. Ammonia is a water soluble compound, a very hydrophilic compound. It converted into ammonium to release via GIT from in stools to decrease load of ammonia. You are getting my points? Decreased hydrogen concentration leads to decreased conversion of ammonia to ammonium. This ammonia is increased in the body as it is not converted. There is this metabolism. There is decreased metabolism. Now we are discussing about the metabolism of ammonia. Now the ammonia concentration is increased. What will happen? It will diffuse freely through blood brain barrier. As it reaches brain, what kind of shit I made here? Try to. As it reaches brain, it forms neurological deterioration. It develops neurological deterioration. Now you have cleared about all the pathophysiology and metabolisms of ammonia, how ammonia leads to neurological deteriorations. Now how patient presents with hepatic encephalopathy or having hepatic encephalopathy. Clinical features. We are going to discuss about clinical features. You have understand that a patient is already cirrhotic or patient is already of any liver injury. He comes to you fatigued, lethargic. Mostly patients are taken in a semi-conscious state or apathy. So we are discussing about clinical features or the clinical presentations. As patient developed hepatic encephalopathy, he has altered levels of consciousness. So how will you determine that he is conscious or not? You will go for Glasgow Coma Scale. Patient may be of stupor condition or coma condition. Stupor is a condition when there is a forceful or painful stimuli elicit the patient or awakes the patient from semi-conscious state or sleeping or subconscious state. Coma is a state in which patient do not respond to any physical stimuli. You got my point. Now the patient of hepatic encephalopathy presented disoriented. You have done its cognitive assessment and you find patient is disoriented. Patient present to you irritability. Patient doesn't know any of his family members except his wife or his elder or younger son or anything else, or maybe his memory doesn't work enough to remember any of his relatives or events. So patient can presents with memory loss. So you'll ask about his attendant about his sleeping pattern. His sleeping patterns will be impaired and multiple other neurological and psychiatric disturbances. The next clinical feature is very important in Pakistan. Patient presented with this feature very much. We found almost all these clinical features in hepatic encephalopathy advanced stage patients. This also present in hepatic encaph patients. Socially aberrant behavior like patient urinate in public without knowing the consequences, without knowing the good and bads, without knowing any ethics, as he is a ill patient, urinating patient publicly, defecating in public without knowing what he is doing, defecating in public, shouting at strangers. Maybe he sees you a doctor, maybe he finds you an angel who is going to take him away to heaven. So he got frightened and start shouting at you, shouting at strangers. Such patient, if you ask anything, any history, any term, his speak will be slurred. You examine for tremor, you find astraxis. You check the tone and you find his muscles are rigid. Muscle rigidity will be present. Patient presented I am telling you for Pakistan and Indian students that hepatic encephalopathy patient presented with all these, most probably 90% of all these clinical features I told you here, patient presented with all these features, or there will be a history of these features. So next thing is how we will diagnose. Diagnosis must be clinical. Your knowledge should be strong enough to diagnose that patient is of hepatic encephalopathy by just asking history. So how will diagnosis? First of all, we'll rule out what causes, what factor. If the patient is of cirrhotic, let's suppose example, we are taking an example, a patient, your patient is already cirrhotic and you know you are treating him for cirrhosis, liver cirrhosis, and he comes to you after 2 weeks and you ask his attendant that what he has developed, and he told you these clinical features, and you ask him did he vomit or did he pass any stools, and the attendant told you that my father or my brother did not pass any stools for past 2 days, and maybe he says that he is passing vomiting or hematemesis. So you ask the history, okay? You getting my point? You ask the history and you found the cause, the main root. When you found the cause, what's causing his hepatic incaf symptoms, you will treat the cause. Like he is having altered mental status, and you ask about what recently a symptom she or he develops, and he tells you he develops hematemesis and he passes black tarry stools. So you got that patient is having GI bleed, so you knew that this hepatic encephalopathy is precipitated by GI bleed. So you rule out the cause, you found the cause. Now you will treat GI bleed. The patient will cure of hepatic encephalopathy when his GI bleed treats. So how we will how we will approach the patient for evaluation? In initial evaluation, my friends are calling for a tea party. Initial evaluation, and I want to complete this topic as soon as possible. This is a very important topic. Wards are in Pakistan and India. Wards are full of hepatic incaf patients, liver cirrhosis patients. So we'll assess mental status. How we will assess mental status? By Glasgow Coma Scale, and we'll check orientation of patient, whether he is oriented well space in time. He knows that where he is in hospital or he is any park. You will ask where he is right now, and the patient will say I am in jungle, I am in masjid, I am in a mosque, I am in a park, etc, etc. His orientation will be defective. So next evaluation will check for tremors, ataraxis. Next thing, you will advise some lab test. Lab test. What will you advise? Here we will advise CBC and basic metabolic panel, in which we will check for electrolytes and renal function test and liver function test. In CBC we will see thrombocytopenia, leukopenia, and any change in HB profiling as GI bleed. As we told that GI bleed patient may be of anemic, so we'll rule out CBC from CBC and basic metabolic panel our causes. So next thing, we'll root out hypoglycemia, whether patient develops hypoglycemia or not. So in basic metabolic panel, we'll see sodium, potassium, calcium, glucose, etc. We test for uremia and ketoacidosis, whether hyperglycemia leads to ketoacidosis, what causes uremia. So in infections and GI bleed, patient may have increased production of nitrous compounds like ammonia. Why we rule out uremia? Because ammonia is increased, so we'll rule out uremia by testing uremia. The next thing, we'll go for CRP, C-reactive protein, whether patient is having any infection running in his body. We'll go for WBC count, we'll go for blood cultures. If he is of bacterial infection, his culture will be positive. We'll do urine analysis, electrolytes, we'll check electrolytes and urine culture. Maybe UTI in causes hepatic encephalopathy. We'll do this for infections. Next thing we'll do, Blood alcohol level. Maybe patient knows that he is cirrhotic and he is going to die in 3 4 months. He went out for a party and secretly he had taken he had drink a huge amount of blood alcohol. How will he eat blood? My mistake. Next test we will go for ammonia level. We'll check ammonia levels. Why ammonia levels? So it's very essential to rule out hepatic encephalopathy. Next important thing is treatment. We have ruled out the cause, we have developed everything, we have done the essential testing, diagnosis, and the most important thing, if patient comes to your altered mental state of health without any liver pathology, you will go for CT brain. You get it? You will go for CT brain, essential component. So treatment, as in our case, patient comes with GI bleed, we'll treat GI bleed, we'll find the cause, upper GI bleed or lower GI bleed, and we will treat it as the protocol is of GI bleed. So treatment, general measures, we will do some general measures. What are the measures? We try to avoid further result, like any medication which causing hepatic toxicity or alcohol, diuretic, like we will restrict him from using diuretics. We will treat precipitating factors, like if he has developed constipation, we will give him laxative so that his abdomen is free of ammonia and bacteria. Treat precipitating factors like GI bleed, hypovolemia, constipation, or electrolyte disturbance. If hypokalemia, will give potassium. If hyponatremia, will give him sodium. And the last treatment plan is of last thing we'll do for him is liver transplant. If there is no treatment we are getting benefit from, then we'll advise liver transplant. So what kind of drugs we can give to patients? Guys, 1 minute. So what we were discussing, what kind of drugs we can give. Now recall your knowledge of my lecture, that what are the four mechanisms which are leading to hepatic encephalopathy. First one was their increased production of ammonia, increase absorption of ammonia, decrease clearance of ammonia, and decrease what was the fourth, decrease metabolism of the ammonia. You got it? You have four mechanisms in your mind that ammonia is accumulating in the body. First of all, you will go for a such drug which is leads to decrease ammonia in the body, in your body or in patient's body. So first thing is we'll give lactulose. So this is a laxative, discrete laxative. It's a first line treatment. First line treatment. What will it do? It decreases the absorption. It decreases absorption of ammonia in your gut. Decreases the absorption of ammonia in your gut. What is the mechanism behind it? I am getting calls and calls. Lactulose converts Lactulose is converted to, my mind is diverted now, lactulose is converting to lactic acid. This lactic acid, there is a intestinal flora, intestinal bacteria which are converting lactulose into lactic acid. This lactic acid acidifies in gut. As the gut pH rises, the gut pH acidifies. This acidifies means hydrogen ion concentration is in excess. This excess hydrogen ion concentration leads to conversion of ammonia into ammonium. hydrogen is coming Hydrogen is coming. This ammonia is converting to ammonium. As the ammonium is formed, it releases in stools and excreted in feces. So there will be decreased concentration of ammonia in blood. The next drug we are going to discuss is rifaximin. It's an non-absorbable antibiotic, broad spectrum antibiotic. It reduces those bacteria which produces ammonia. You are getting my point? Rifaximin is a non-absorbable broad spectrum antibiotic. It kills those bacteria which produces ammonia. We can add lactulose plus rifaximin to decrease bacterial load as well as ammonia concentration in blood. So to prevent any recurrence of hepatic encephalopathy. So the final treatment we are getting is liver transplant. One day we will have a complete detailed video of surgical clinical liver transplant method and liver transplant indications. So that's all for hepatic encephalopathy. If you have any questions, you can ask me anytime.